Okay, good morning. Wow. Well, that was not what I intended to do. Okay. So today's going to be a little bit different. Let me tell you what's going on. I have started grading the uh, estates assignment from week 5. And boy, this is really disappointing. I've graded about 20% of the class so far, so a fairly significant sample, but um, not everybody. And so what I have to say today may not apply to you. Um, but there's a lot of things that I sort of keep seeing as I'm grading that is sort of troubling. And it's troubling because these are things that we've talked about and things where I've said, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And then you come back and not you specifically, but like students come back and do something different. And that's concerning to me because on essays, I'm not really super concerned about what your answer is because I'm looking for the reasoning. But for short answers like this one, you got to get it right. Okay. So what I want to do today is I want to go through the things that I have seen so far. And I'm going to continue adding to this list over the course of the week. And at the end of the week, I'm going to upload the list to e-learning so that you can have the benefit of sort of everything that I've seen. And then I want you guys to resubmit the assignment. I'm going to create an assignment on e-learning. You're going to resubmit the assignment to just do what it needs to do, right? And nothing else. Okay. So these issues that I've identified are not in any sort of particular order, except frankly, they're in the order that I thought of them. So they're in the order that I sort of realized that there was a pattern for this. Um, so the first thing that I want to talk about is there's an awful lot of students who seem to think that a reference to heirs creates a fee tail. And it just doesn't. It just doesn't. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys that on this assignment, the words fee tail appear nowhere in the model answer, not once. If they appear in your answer, that is incorrect. Okay. The second, and I'll explain why later. We're going to talk about the fee tail in a little more detail later. The next thing is that just because someone has children doesn't mean that they have heirs. I've said this on several occasions. Nobody has heirs until they die. And your children are not automatically your heirs. You have the power to disinherit your children. So something that you'll need to keep in mind is where a future interest attaches to the heirs of someone living, you have to know what's going to happen. You have to understand that it's more complicated than just well, I guess that means his children take. Okay. It's also more complicated than well, I guess it's just void because the heirs don't exist. The interest still exists, but you have to recognize that there are conditions attached to it. And I think this brings me to the next piece of the puzzle, which is, boy, a lot of students really like complicating things. This is not nearly as, this assignment was not nearly as complicated as you guys wanted to make it. Okay, let me tell you guys what I'm looking for, because we went through this, I guess, 2 weeks ago in the tutorial when we did the conveyances in the tutorial, right? You start with the present interest to the holder of the present interest. And then you identify the future interest to the holder in the possessory interest. And then if there are conditions, you add the condition exists, the condition in question. Okay? So I don't understand why I'm getting paragraphs upon paragraphs upon paragraphs when this is all I wanted. This is it. This is it. So, make your life easy. Make my life easy. Don't give me a bunch of stuff I don't need. Okay? All right. The next thing, this is number 4 on my list of 11 things. 12 things, my list of 12 things. Future interests are uncertain in 2 aspects, and you have to acknowledge both of them. The first one is that it's not always certain that a future interest will come into existence at all. And that's because if the possessory interest that creates the future interest never comes into existence, then that future interest just disappears. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by that a little bit. Future interests create possessory interests when they vest. Possessory interests create future interests when they come into existence. Okay. Um, if the possessory interest is never created because the future interest that creates it never vests, then it never has an opportunity to create a future interest. Okay, so the future interest has to come into existence, and it comes into existence when the possessory interest comes into existence that creates it. And then it vests when the possessory interest that creates it disappears. So let me see if putting this in the chat maybe helps. So the possessory interest creates the future interest. The future interest vests when the possessory interest dies, and that vesting creates a new possessory interest, and so on, and so on, and so on. Okay? So you have to know when the future interest comes into existence, and then you also have to know when it vests. Okay? Next, let's make sure we understand the list of possessory interests. There are 5 of them, 5 possessory interests. 1, the fee simple absolute, which is created using the language of to A and their heirs. Okay. 2, the life estate, which is created by using the language to A for life. 3, the defeasible fee simple or the fee simple subject to executory limitation. There are 2 fee simple defeasibles. The fee simple determinable, which requires an event to occur, and the fee simple subject to condition subsequent, which requires a condition to cease to exist. And finally, the fee tail. The fee tail requires language that specifically creates the fee tail, to A and the heirs of his body. And we will talk about the ways in which fee tail comes into existence in a little bit, but know that if you don't have the language of the fee tail, no fee tail. The fee tail is disfavored, so in places where it hasn't been abolished, we require specific language for it. Okay? Next, let's make sure that we have the list of future interests handy. There are 4 future interests: the reversion, the remainder, the possibility of reverter, and the right of re-entry. And now let's talk about how possessory interests relate to future interests. The first thing that you have to remember about this relationship is that possessory interests define the future interest that comes after them, which means that you have to read the conveyance in the order that it's presented. Okay? Everything has meaning, every clause has meaning, every word has meaning. We do not throw it away unless it meets a very specific set of circumstances. Okay, and we talked about most of those when we talked about the restraints on marriage in Shelley's case and the restraints on faith, and right, we talked about most of those. If the possessory interest is fee simple absolute or fee tail, there's no such thing as a future interest. Those do not create future interests. If the possessory interest is a life estate, the next future interest must be either a reversion or a remainder. It's a reversion if it goes back to the original grantor, and it's a remainder if it goes to a third party. The life estate cannot be inherited. It cannot be inherited. Remember, even when we talked about Shelley's case, that's not an inheritable life estate. That's a specific circumstance where a conveyance that purports to convey a life estate actually conveys fee simple absolute. Okay? If the possessory interest is a fee simple determinable, then the next future interest must be the possibility of reverter. If you say to me that Albert holds a fee simple determinable and Bob has a reversion, no, that's wrong. If you say to me that Albert has a fee simple determinable and then Bob has fee simple absolute, no, that's wrong because Bob has a future interest. It may vest into fee simple absolute, but he doesn't have fee simple absolute until it vests. What he has is a possibility of reverter. Okay? If the possessory interest is a fee simple subject to condition subsequent, the next future interest must be a right of reentry. Next, as I said, the fee tail is disfavored. We require the precise language. So we already mentioned one, 2A and the heirs of his body. Another one, 2A and his heirs begotten of his spouse, right? Usually by naming the spouse. 2A and his heirs begotten of Betty or Carol or Deirdre or whatever, right? I mean, like, this specific conveyance is intended to prevent inheritance by children from prior marriages or subsequent marriages. And finally, you can do this, right? 2A in fee tail, we can just say, this is the interest that we are conveying, all right? If you do not have one of these languages, you do not have a fee tail. You just don't, okay? Next, awful lot of students read the phrase 2A for life and told me that A had fee simple absolute. You've just wiped away the phrase for life. 2A for life always means a life estate. Nothing else. Okay? Next, awful lot of students did not include the shadow grant. Okay, and this is my term. This is my term. This is not present in any of the texts. But the shadow grant is the grant to the original grantor that is retained when they fail to grant fee simple Absolute. Here is the test. Is there a sequence of events, no matter how unlikely, no matter how many things have to happen, is there a sequence of events where nobody who is named in the conveyance takes? If that is true, then at the end, there has to be some sort of conditional future interest attached to the original grantor. Has to happen. Okay. Next, some students have suggested that some of the future interests created by the conveyances are void for uncertainty. And Crystal brought this up when we discussed conveyances in this tutorial. And so, Crystal, I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. But none of these conveyances involve uncertain conditions. Uncertain conditions are conditions where we don't know how to answer the question, has this condition been met? Okay. We don't know whether A is a good person. Okay. The case that the students who refer to this keep citing refers to a conveyance where the child took so long as they married a man of Jewish parentage and the Jewish faith. And the issue for the House of Lords was, well, what does it mean to be of Jewish parentage? Does that require one parent or two? And first of all, that decision's pretty anti-Semitic, because Jews know what it means to be of Jewish parentage, and if they had asked any of us, we could have told them. But even without that, okay, if you can answer the question, has this been met? If you know how to answer that, then it's not uncertain. Okay. The last thing that I want to talk about, and then I'm going to let you guys go, we're going to be short today, is an awful lot of students seem really excited by the notion of escheat. And let me put that in the chat so that you know what we're talking about. Escheat. Escheat is when there's no identifiable heirs and the state takes property that otherwise would be inheritable. Okay. I don't know about the Caribbean because this is not a class about decedents' estates. So I haven't done any research on this, but in the places that I'm familiar with, escheat is incredibly rare. Incredibly rare. And I think that a lot of this has to do with the confusion between heirs and children. So remember that having children doesn't make them your heirs. And not having children doesn't mean you don't have heirs. Okay? So this has been a lot sort of thrown at you all at once, and I recognize that. Before we go, what question? Oh, the last thing that I want to pass along to you guys. I'm not going to post it until the end of the week because I want to keep adding to it as I continue grading. But at the end of the week, when I finish grading the assignments, I will post this list of errors and issues for you guys to have and to review. I will also add an assignment onto e-learning where you can resubmit the estates assignment. Okay, so scores on this assignment that I'm grading now, kind of disastrous, but you're going to get another bite at the apple. Okay. All of that said, what questions do you have about, sort of what I've thrown at you today? Okay, going once, going twice. Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad you think so, Travis. If any of your classmates disagree, you guys know how to reach me. Go ahead, Crystal. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you, sir, for the constructive criticism because I think I'm one of those that didn't really answer the question fully. So thank you for the
Look,
comment.
I don't want you guys to, like, the one thing I don't want you guys to feel at the end of this, and I feel like maybe in the 9 o'clock tutorial I didn't do as great a job with this. I don't want you to feel like I'm yelling at you over this, because I want you guys to succeed, and I I want, as you say, Crystal, I want this to come across as constructive criticism that's intended to help you guys understand the concepts better, right? I don't mind telling you, I will be honest with you, like, I'm aggravated by some of this, but but I want you guys to be learning from it. I don't want you to just shut down because you feel like I can't be satisfied, right? I want you to feel like there's something here that is helping you get better. So that's the goal here. That's what I want. And if that's how you feel if that's how you feel what's coming out of this, then I really appreciate that. So, okay, I'm gonna let you guys go, and I will see you tomorrow. And like I said, at the end of the week, you'll get a common errors document, and you'll get another chance to resubmit this. So see you tomorrow. Take care, and bye.